to this how-to video, which will show you how to create a jellyfish artwork on an aluminium composite panel using our Jellyfish freehand template distributed by Anest Iwata and Two Spray products. You can see here I'm just prepping the aluminium composite panel. So using the KC20 House of Colour water-based degreaser, I sprayed some of that on before I started sanding. That way it avoids you sanding any of the dirt or grime into your base, which could create problems when you clear. Once you've sprayed it on, you wipe it off. Then I scotch padded with a grey Scotch-Brite just to scuff up the surface, and then I cleaned it again with the water-based degreaser. I'm now using a 3M green masking tape to mask up the comp panel. So these composite panels are available from any signs supply shops as well. You can see here this is the actual template, and we're going to go through and use a few elements of it to create some underwater effects, the jellyfish, and render them as well. So you'll get to see how to use it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up blue. So using Trident water-based airbrush colours, we're going to start with some reducer. So you can see how much I've put in that empty 50ml bottle. A dash of white and a little bit of blue. Give that a really good shake. So we want to make just a bit of a lighter blue rather than their standard true blue, so that's why we added the white in. Plus it's going to give us a bit of extra coverage because it's now an opaque colour, and then we can shade with the regular blue on top of that. It's going to give this another quick clean, and with the blue now we're going to start to base that up. So just using my airbrush, my Iwata CMC Plus Micron. So giving it a light coat, and then you can see here I'm using my heat gun just to dry that off. So remember, when using water-based paints, it is handy to use a heat gun. It's just going to speed up the drying process for you and help you with adhesion if it is a cold climate or you're working at home in not a controlled environment. So it's a good idea to have one handy. So I've just done the second coat. Don't worry too much if it's not super even. And we're just going to build up the coats of this blue. So you can see I do numerous coats. I don't try and flood it in one. So you can see here just continuing to dry each layer with that heat gun. And we're going to do another pass. So give it another good coat until we're completely satisfied that it's all covered and we're happy with the blue base colour. So take your time. You can also use a mini spray gun, obviously if you're doing a bigger area, but for this particular demo, the airbrush works perfect. Gets enough coverage. Just means you've got to do a few extra coats, which is not a problem. So you can see now we've got that first base colour down. We've let that dry, and I've got white in my airbrush. I've just grabbed the Jellyfish template, and I'm going to start with creating a waterline on the top of the artwork. So we're going to mask off the rest of the template, and we're just going to use that edge on the top of the template there to create our waterline. So using white, we just spray along, and then we're going to move along with that template so that we don't spray the water section. We're only spraying where the template is because it's already got that water effect to it. And we remove the paper, which was just protecting our overspray, and we're going to use some of the water effect towards the top, as well as we're going to airbrush that jellyfish in there, which we've just done. So he's hovering at the top of that water line. And you can see I'm using that water to create just a bit of a swirly effect, which we can blend off. So using white again, we're just going to brighten up those areas. Now water, obviously it's fairly uneven, so you don't want to be too regimented with your strokes. They can be a bit all over the place. It will add to the effect. Okay. We're just working that in now. Once you're happy with that, we are going to switch our colour. We're going to mix up some violet. The reason I like to use violet is because it works well on the blue. You could also get away with using a dark blue, but what we'll do is we'll add that in a bit later. So using our template again, we're going to add some of the rock and just some areas underneath the sea here. So we're just going to create some sort of ground, uneven ground, some rocks sticking up, some coral effects, that sort of thing. Just working that violet in so you can coat it as you go. A bit of freehand, and also using those templates there to create some of the rock patterns, using that rock pattern section at the base of the template. You can see, just work that in. So we're just sketching, and then we're just going to shade it freehand and just render it out. Just take your time, add what you want into it. Again, you can use the template. There's all different areas that you can use to create an uneven ground texture, and then just freehand off that. The beauty with water is that you just make it up. There's no real rule to it. Just using the edge of those, and then I'm going to start putting some, using the actual tentacles of the jellyfish on the template. We're going to get some sort of seaweed coming up off the base of the ocean floor there. Again, using just violet. And then I've switched back to white, and we're going to start to pick out some of these highlights. So I'm just working on the edge of the boulders and the coral formations, more sort of rocky in this particular artwork, but you can definitely add in coral and stuff if you like. Just some highlights on the ground of the ocean floor there. And then going in again with the tentacles. So just, I'm spraying the tips of those tentacles just to get those seaweedy sort of underwater plant look. So it's really versatile, this template. You can use it for a lot of different things to create all your underwater textures. So just play around with it. I'm going to come back in and add a bit more detail using the white and some elements of freehand as well. So just be creative with it. You can see here I'm using those water sections of the template to create extra effects in the rock, just building up some layers and some texture. So you can use all sorts of things. And then just freehanding back over it. So I use a mix of freehand, getting the most out of the template, and then yeah, just freehand some detail off that. So just coming back in with my violet now. So just re-detailing over what I've already done, just to deepen the shadows. So you can spend plenty of time just adding all little bits and pieces in here. Now I'm just from a distance fogging in the distance. So if you make that a bit blurrier and the foreground sharper, you're going to get that sense of depth. So you can see here I'm finished with that step and what it looks like. And now we're going to go ahead and add in a big jellyfish. So using the template, mask off around it just so we control our overspray. Again, if you were to get some overspray, it's not the end of the world. You can always turn it into something else or paint your blue back over it because it is opaque. So now using white, I'm just going to fog around the template and on the tentacles just so we've got all our guides in place. Then we can remove it and we're going to start freehanding. So I'm going to have a light source coming off the center of this painting, so it's going to be a bit brighter to the right hand side. So as I'm looking at it now, the right hand side of the jellyfish in that section there where I'm airbrushing is going to be slightly brighter than the other end. So I'm just building up the white, adding texture in there. I'm not just coating it in one big blob, using what the templates outlined and just defining it more and putting in some uneven textures. The beauty of jellyfish and a lot of underwater animals, you can add your little bits and pieces into it and it just adds to the effect. There's no real rule. If you're trying to replicate a specific type of fish or animal, then be a bit more accurate and get a reference off the internet that can help you. The tentacles, I'm adding a bit of freehand to over the top of what I've done with the template, just so they're not as harsh. So the idea is I don't use the templates as a solid sort of guide. I sort of use them just lightly to get my shapes and shadows and then work off that freehand. I'm just working off this jellyfish that's on the waterline there, so highlighting him, running the tentacles down, adding a bit of freehand as well. So nice and close when you're doing the tentacles, and keep the airbrush moving, paint on, paint off. And I'm just going to add in another one here. And again, use the template to get a bit of an outline and then freehand off that, remembering where my light source is going to be. Add a few more tentacles. So I've got the three mapped in now, and I've switched back to violet, and now I'm going to add some colour. So I'm not super accurate with where I'm going with it, and I'm using the bubble part of the template there to add some sort of texture to the bottom of those tentacles, or the top towards the body of the jellyfish. And you can see I'm adding some purple into this one as well. So these will be all colours that will show through, so you're going to make them more transparent as you go on. There's a picture of what I'm up to so far. So now I'm going to switch to a light blue. So this is essentially just white mixed with a few drops of the true blue from Trident. And I'm just going to add a brighter tone over the top just to really start to get that transparent look, so that you're looking through it. And once your white goes back over the top, then you're really going to get that sense of depth. You don't want to just do a jellyfish with white and that's it. You want to add some colour into it, and the reflections from the ocean and the colours. So just take your time, and like I said, if you need to get yourself a reference, that can help as well. Just work the tentacles in, and I'm also going to dust over the top of the waterline there, just to tone that down a bit. And I'm also going to use that opaque blue, that pastel blue mix that we've done, just to add more texture into the rock. So you don't want to go over everything, you're just sort of picking out some light spots. So where you would think the highlights would pick up on those areas. So now I'm going to be working with just the normal true blue from Trident. So it's just a transparent blue, it's a dark blue. And I'm just going to add in a few more details and shades. So I'm going to shade with this colour. Again, don't go over everything, but just sort of detail it more. Remember, if you struggle with any of this freehand, you can always get your template, but a mix of freehand and using the template is going to give you a more realistic look. So you can see there I've added now that darker blue, and I'm going to dust over that waterline as well. Just add a bit more depth to the water, and also to the bottom now. I've used the violet previously, I'm just going to use the blue now to tie all that in and further shade the rocks and the floor of the ocean. just to get a bit more depth. Keep shading with that, and then we're going to mask off now the top of that waterline. So just use a bit of masking tape. I've taken the tack off it by rubbing it against my jeans, just to knock off a bit of that tack so it doesn't stick too aggressively. So mask it off, and we're going to run a highlight. So the gleam that comes through in most of the ocean images and artworks that you see around, you get that sort of gleam coming off the waterline. So we're going to add that in by fogging the white in. You can see I'm not too stressed if I get a bit of overspray on the jellyfish, because I can come back and I'm going to do highlights on top, so they're going to opaque anyway. Because remember, they are transparent, so you can see I've added that highlight in now, and now I'm going to brighten off in only the section where that highlight is. So it's just giving the appearance that the sun is creating that light source, and it's like glowing through to the ocean floor. So just pick up on some of these edges. So just take your time building up. I tend to use my white a bit thinner as well, so it takes a few extra coats to get coverage, but it avoids the tip drying and the spitting if it's rather thick. So come in again and start detailing the jellyfish, just adding the white highlights and extra texture to them. This also makes their bodies look a lot more transparent, but you don't want to go right around everything with the white. Again, go in, re-brighten that a bit more, then add a bit more texture in the tentacles, run some more freehand, just so you get that depth. So that way you've got a mix of the ones that you did with your template and the ones that you've done freehand. Just realigning that template to get some brighter edges and some masking edges on that jellyfish that we've done. Just for the highlights, you can see how it's picked it up nicely. What we'll do next is we're going to freehand off that, and we're going to add the transparency. So we're going to work over the top of the colours that we've already done, just to pull out the shape of that jellyfish, keeping in mind where our light source is. So you can see now it looks like we're looking right through the jellyfish. And I'm just going to run some more tentacles down, some of the stingers. So just continue to work in, creating a few more highlights on the jellyfish, give them a more 3D look, adding more of the stingers, the tentacles, and also highlighting the rocks on the ocean floor, just using the white. Just don't overdo it, less is more. So think about your light source and just add that in as you create your artwork. So now I've gone back to my blue, and I'm just going to deepen some of the shadows now, just to create a bit more depth on that waterline. You can see I'm dusting over a lot of it, so which is going to in turn knock back the white highlights on the edge and focus more on that light source in the center of the artwork. You can see it's starting to make it look a bit more 3D. Also on that waterline there, just knock that back a bit. So by adding the shadow, it's just darkening it. And you can see how concentrated that light source is. So just a few extra little bits and pieces with the white now. Remember, it's all the little bits and pieces that really make it come to life. So dot white highlights just to really brighten up the artwork in spots where the highlights are prominent because of your light source. And now we've switched back to our template and we're going to start adding the bubbles. So you'll see there's bubbles on the actual template that you can use. So for this exercise, I'm just going to dust over them, and then I'm doing a dot white highlight on the top of each one. So this is a simple way to do it. You can do more elaborate by running extra colors in, but I thought for this particular demonstration I'll keep it very simple, and then you can just add to it if you like to make them a bit more three-dimensional. So you can see there's some clusters of bubbles as well. And then I'm going to do some freehand highlights as well. And there you have it. There's the completed artwork. So we're just going to unmask it now. So remove that masking tape off the comp panel. And then you can obviously clear it with either 2-pack clear. So although these are water-based colours, you can totally 2-pack clear over them with either a matte or a glossy 2-pack clear. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with your jellyfish template. Thanks again.